want to bring in the former High Commissioner to the United Kingdom, George Brandis now. George, so we were talking about this an hour ago. It was going to be a landslide, and again, it's exit polls, but there's not really a reason to suggest that this won't all be confirmed. It could even be a bit bigger later on. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think that's right. I mean, these exit polls are very accurate. It tells you all you need to know, Pete, about the terrible mess the Tories had got themselves into. That if they win 131 seats, as this poll suggests, that will be at the upper end of their expectations. I've had a lot of conversations with Conservatives in the last few days, and there were a lot of very senior people very, very worried that they wouldn't get more than 100. There were some polls 2 weeks ago that suggested that they might actually be beaten into third place by the Liberal Democrats and might end up with as few as 60 or so seats. So for them to win 131 seats is a catastrophic loss. It's not, as your UK correspondent said a moment ago, the worst loss in the history of the Conservative Party. It's not quite as bad as the 1906 election, when the Conservative government went out of office losing 246 seats. If the exit poll is correct, they will have gone out of office losing 234 seats. But, you know, when you're having that sort of conversation, it just underlines how catastrophic the loss is. The Liberal Democrats on 61 seats are very close to their best ever result in a century. The other big winner is Nigel Farage. If he wins 13 seats, that will be beyond expectations. Obviously, the huge loser is the Conservative Party, but also the Scottish National Party, which had 48 seats, has completely collapsed. That's important because I think that will take a lot of the momentum out of Scottish independence for a generation.
So back on the Conservatives, and these pictures, of course, now these are the votes that are coming in to be officially tallied and officially counted. So, a flurry of activity that's going to be taking place there again. So that's all going to be confirmed in the exit polls over the course of the next few hours. So, but I don't think we're going to be getting any victory speeches for now. Back on the Conservatives, and Kay Burley, our colleague over at the UK, just singled out Jeremy Hunt, who could possibly lose his seat, George, maybe even Penny Mordaunt as well, who had been a potential leader of the Conservatives.
That's right. I mean, both Penny Mordaunt, the leader of the House of Commons, who's the member for Southampton, and Jeremy Hunt, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, were on the at the top of the at-risk senior cabinet minister list. And I expect they both will lose their seats. The Conservatives have, if the Conservatives have 131, that is a large enough body of men and women in the House of Commons to be a proper opposition. So as I said before, this is not the complete annihilation that many were fearing. It's just a shockingly bad massacre.
Yeah. Look, you mentioned Nigel Farage, and as I spoke to Laura about, the expectation was, and when we talked about this last hour too, that, you know, he could pick up 3 seats. The last poll suggested he could get 13. Well, it looks like that's what he's got. Now, the remarkable thing about this is that Nigel Farage...
with those figures.
Well, he didn't... But to be fair to Nigel Farage, he started the campaign late, so he's only been going for 4 weeks, though, George. I mean, So even if it's somewhere around that figure, it's a pretty good result for him, is it not?
Oh, of course it is. Of course, two observations. Of all those figures in the exit polls, the ones I'd be most careful of are the Farage party figures for this reason. His support is highly localised.
Right.
And if you extrapolate national figures, that doesn't necessarily reflect local difference. So let's wait and see how many seats Farage actually wins. But he obviously is going to win more than the 2 or 3 that the earlier polls were predicting. But Farage's impact on this election is not to be judged by the number of seats he wins, but by the number of seats he prevented the Conservative Party from winning. So the Conservative Party vote has basically fallen by about half since the last election. At the last election, it was a tick under 44%. Now it's about half that. The polling evidence suggested that of the half of the Conservative people who voted Conservative last time who didn't vote Conservative this time, half of those voted for reform.
Okay.
So in other words, what Nigel Farage did was take away a quarter of the Conservative vote. And in a first-past-the-post system, that meant that relatively, or very safe, Conservative seats were brought into peril and lost to the Labor Party, or in the south of England, the Liberal Democrats, because Farage bled away a quarter of their vote.